Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Mitesh Jani, a practicing dentist, writer, and founder of selfworth.ca, a platform dedicated to inner work, self-study, and personal transformation. Mitesh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darlington. It's great to be here.
All right, I would like you to add a little bit to that introduction.
Sure, yeah. Like you said, my day job is being a dentist. I'm a clinician, but I've been writing for a really long time, over 10 years. And for a lot of those 10 years, I didn't really share my writing with anybody. But I just kept writing mainly because I didn't mean to share it with anybody. I wrote because I just enjoyed to think on paper or on a Word document, and I kind of like to store all my deep thoughts that I had indulged in over the years, and just for the purpose of being able to look back at them and see how I used to think about things and whether I still agree with that or how I've changed. And so it was a very personal sort of activity that it was for many, many years. Until recently, I decided to take some of those writings, and I wrote my first book and I published my first book. So, I like to say that I'm a dentist by day, but writer or thinker by night. And that's kind of, how I'm here today.
All right, thank you so much. So, you are known as a pioneer. Okay. Your book is called The Process: Six Mechanics of Achievement. Before we talk about achievements, what do you believe most people misunderstand about the journey towards success?
I think what all of us do at some point is whenever we set out to achieve a goal, we tie it to some metric, right? Like in business, it might be a dollar figure or a net worth, or if you're going to the gym or if you're, working out and stuff, then you might be attaching your metric to how you look at the end of it or how much weight, number of pounds that you lost. So I think it's a very innate reflex to attach achievement to a number or a metric of some sort so that we can work our way up to it. I think the issue with that approach is when you eventually reach that metric, usually you will just want to set a higher number and continue the chase, right? So we continue to defer our fulfillment to when we achieve that metric. And anytime we do achieve the metric, it's almost anticlimactic, but it doesn't last very long. And then we always have to chase some other future goal that we set once again for ourselves. So this sort of cycle, what it usually does is you're always chasing some future state, some future circumstance, some future situation, a future version of yourself that you say, when I reach this point, then I will be happy or fulfilled. And we fulfillment just like that. So I try to bring achievement to the present, right? And it's about leaning into the process of getting to your goals. Like you can still have the number that you're wanting to achieve, but you have to have a system or a way of thinking in which you ground today's actions and find fulfillment through today's actions. And that's the only way that the process becomes truly fulfilling or meaningful to you.
Thank you so much, Mitesh, for that wonderful answer. So many people experience what we call a midlife crisis. What do you believe is the root cause of this struggle in today's society?
That's a great question. I think the midlife crisis is becoming more and more common. It's just a set of symptoms, right? When you start to feel like an anxiety or a loss of purpose or burnout, and those kind of symptoms, we a lot of us feel, right? You don't have to wait till midlife to feel that. You can feel you likely feel them way before midlife, and I think one of the root causes that gets us to that point is some flaws in how the modern education system prepares you or fails to prepare you for that matter. Um, and that's because of three main things that are part of the modern education system. One is you are continuously taught how to regurgitate solutions that are already given to you, right? So it's a lot about memorizing how to do a problem or memorizing facts. And then if you're able to accurately regurgitate them on a test, great job, right? And then another thing is the modern education system lays out a preset path for you. So there's always a next grade, a next test, a next certificate to continue to strive towards. And that's all given to you. Like, yes, after you finish grade one, this is what you're going to pursue, grade two. And it just continues that way. And what it does is, one, when you keep regurgitating solutions, you don't train yourself to think critically and problem solve by yourself. And number two, when you're starting to be given this next test or next step always presented to you, you never learn how to set your own meaningful goals or your milestones or create a self-directed path towards a better life or towards any kind of achievement. So we're just not taught how to critically think or to set our own meaningful goals. And then one of the last things that I think the modern education system also does is what we just talked about achievement being about numbers, because it shifts our focus onto what grade you're going to receive, right? Because it all matters how much of a percentage you get on your test. That is always the goal. So that, again, it drives our focus towards metrics that we just talked about, right? So with given this sort of system, when most people graduate, they just kind of are a bit lost and they're not sure what to follow. They don't know how to look inward to set a meaningful goal for themselves. So what do? They just chase societal prescriptions, right? The society will also continue to give you all these next steps, right? They'll say, oh, by 30, you should have a house, or by 32, you should have at least one or two children. By 35, you should have this number of this many dollars in your investment account. So again, all these societal prescriptions are always there to tell you what to do. And so we're just left chasing these prescriptions because we never learn to look inward and set our own meaningful path in life. And when you continue to chase these societal norms or pressures for much of your life, eventually you will feel burnt out because you never connected with your own desires, your own values, and never pursued something that is meaningful to you. Just what's meaningful to society, or what other people will like to see you do, right?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Nitesh. So, when someone decides they want to change their life or pursue a major goal, what does the ideal beginning of that journey look like?
Yeah. So I like to use the story of Steve Jobs to sort of demonstrate what an ideal beginning looks like. And the very nature of it is not ideal, and that's okay, right? So when Steve Jobs was taking a college course, he eventually dropped out of the college course. And one of the first things that he did when he dropped out is he sat into a calligraphy class, in which he was not even enrolled in it, so he wasn't going to get any credit for sitting in this class. But he was just curious, and it kind of piqued his interest to sit and learn about calligraphy, right? So what's important to note that is that it was not part of some grand plan of his to learn calligraphy and build off of that somehow. And there was no guarantee that it was going to be useful to learn calligraphy. So it was a step that he took that kind of didn't make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things. Many people would have questioned it and called it a bad decision. It seemed reckless to just waste your time sitting in a class where you're not going to get any credit for it. And it just is a random skill that isn't very useful, right? Or immediately useful. But he did it anyway. And many years later, what happened is when he was designing the operating system for the Mac, some of the very principles of typewriting and laying out words and letters that he learned in the calligraphy class came back to him. And he used all those principles in the design language of the Mac. So many years later, that stuff almost became so useful again and actually changed the way Apple designed their computers, right? And so Steve Jobs himself says, based on this story, that you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So in that moment when he was taking the calligraphy class, nothing really made sense. And there was no way for him to know how that experience was going to be useful to him somehow in the future. But what was important was that he followed his curiosity with action, right? And even when things don't make sense in the beginning, that sometimes is a good sign because when you try to always logically connect the dots or make the puzzle fit, you will just think in a logical mindset, which sidesteps your ability to tap into your intuitive forces and your intuition. But when you explore random inklings or your curiosity or be spontaneous and just act on a hunch or explore inclination of yours, that is where you're truly tapping into your intuition. And in the early stages of anything, it is best to experiment with new ideas, new thoughts, new opportunities that come your way. And that is how you get started on something meaningful. And it doesn't always have to culminate in some amazing, useful thing that you ended up doing, but it almost always gives you something great to start with, something that fills you with energy because you're fulfilling your curiosity, and it always will start to become a more cohesive path, right? So every beginning, I always say, will feel a little bit reckless or haphazard or random, directionless, just like Steve Jobs did. But slowly, as you continue to act and employ your intuition, it will start to make sense logically down the road. So don't start with logic, start with the spirit that you have, and then logically the puzzle will come together as you continue to go.
Okay, so moving on, you believe everyone should treat their mind and body like an athlete. What does that mean, and how can someone begin training themselves in that way?
For sure. So I think why it's important to really prioritize your mind and body, no matter what field you're in. I think it's important that we go back thousands of years, right? Uh, in in the generations of the past, maybe when we were hunter gatherers, right? We had very generalized societies, and that means that every individual was well versed in all aspects of life, right? They could cook, they could farm their own stuff, they would build their own furniture, they would build their own house, and everyone could do kind of everything. Okay. But over time, as we prioritized efficiency, and we started to live in bigger groups, we started to delegate tasks. So now we would have one person building furniture for everybody and one person doing all the cooking for everybody. And that just made things more efficient, right? Um, and then, furthermore, as we started becoming more advanced of a civilization, we started introducing currency. So now someone could just grow up learning how to do one specific task, do that task, earn money, and then use that money to buy the tasks or buy the services or products that they can't build themselves, right? So there's this general trend towards specialization in our civilization, right? So every single person is so specialized when you think about it. They do a very specific task and they don't know too much about the things around it. So we've gotten deeper and more specialized knowledge about every little field of work, right? Now, combine that with the fact that we've had so much global advancements in transport and communication that now you're not uh, competing with just your immediate surroundings, right? If you're a software programmer in the US, doesn't mean you just have to be the best software programmer in the US. No, your company can hire somebody remotely from India to do it. So now you're competing against such a bigger pool, right? So if you take those two things, one is a highly specialized field in pretty much every field, and number two, a bigger pool of competition, that means the level of competition and the level of dedication to your field that you have to provide to be at the top is so much higher than ever before. And so what you will notice is in all professions, maybe not the average, but the elites will always focus on getting that small edge or advantage over everybody. And even in fields that are not like athletics or anything, and it's just mostly cognitively centered fields, we will see that the elites will prioritize things like their physical health and mental health, right? So, for example, chess. Chess has nothing to do with being a great athlete or doing cardio or keeping fit, right? You just have to sit there and think. That's what we would think. But in this day and age, the topmost people in chess, like Magnus Carlsen, for example, they have a very strict routine because they know they have to be fit to have a good healthy mental state to facilitate. They need that extra edge to be at the top. For example, violinists, right? You think, okay, it's just sitting down and playing an instrument, but no. The top violinists have a rigorous training regimen that helps them maintain good posture, and in turn helps their practice and makes them that much better of a violinist. So even traditionally non-physical fields are starting to realize that to be at the top or the elite, you have to prioritize your mind and your body like an athlete does. And so that is why it is so important that anybody in any field can immensely benefit from becoming an athlete of the body and of the mind. Does that kind of make sense?
All right, thank you so much, Mitesh. So here is my final question for you.
Mhm.
If there's one thing you will leave listeners, one message you will leave listeners about all these entire conversations, what would you want that to be?
If we had to focus on one thing, it would be on starting, right? And then on the power of reckless beginnings, like we talked about. And oftentimes we think oh, I've got a bunch of responsibilities, I have a job, I have bills to pay, I have a family to take care of. How can I be reckless or just do random things, right? So I think it's important to remember that we're not trying to quit our job, leave our responsibilities behind, and go do something reckless or curious or follow our curiosity. It's just about inviting a few minutes a day or a regular sort of invitation for spontaneity in our schedule, right? So carve out 5 to 10 minutes of your day every day to explore your curiosities, your inclinations, and just do things that are related to whatever you feel like in that moment. And as you do this regularly, you will start to see that it sort of grows into your life to more than 5 minutes a day, right? And you start to find more meaningful pursuits. And then you have a point in your day where you have something that is meaningful to you that truly satisfies your spirit and nourishes kind of your deepest desires and values. And when you start to do this, you inevitably start to find fulfillment, even if it's in those 5 minutes a day. You have something to look forward to. And over time, this is bound to grow into your life in a bigger way. And you will have bigger goals, bigger aspirations, and more meaningful achievements.
Okay, so for those who would like to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is selfworth.ca, and they can find all the information about me and my work. They can find links to my book. They can find links to my social media, Instagram, etc. So everything is on selfworth.ca.
All right, Mitesh, once again, thank you so much for coming to my show. Thank you for sharing your insights and your perspective with me and my audience. It was really great to have you. Thank you for making this episode a very, very special one for me and my audience. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Darlington. I appreciate your time.